Good evening and welcome. This is the March 22nd, 2023 public hearing of the Land Use Commission. The City Code directs this body to hear applications for map and text amendments, special uses including plan developments, zoning relief and appeals from decisions of the zoning administrator, as well as to make recommendations regarding the city's long-term planning goals and objectives. Depending on the type of matter, this commission will either make a final determination or send its recommendation to City Council. Ms. Jones, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Aravallo?
Here.
Commissioner Halleck?
Here.
Commissioner Hugo? Commissioner Johnson? Here. Commissioner Linwall?
Here.
Commissioner Woodinchev?
Here.
Commissioner Pucteau?
Here.
Commissioner Westerberg?
Here.
And Chair Rogers.
Present. With 8 members present, we do have a quorum. Also present tonight from city staff, our neighborhood and land use planner Megan Jones, Assistant City Attorney Brian George, Zoning Administrator Melissa Klotz, Planning Manager Liz Williams. This is a formal hearing, and there are rules that govern our proceedings. Most importantly, only one person speaks at a time so that all testimony may be accurately recorded. Anyone who wishes to address the commission regarding any matter on tonight's agenda will have the opportunity to do so at the appropriate time. Our procedure is to hear from staff on the documents on file and then receive testimony and other evidence from the applicant or appellant. After that, persons wishing to make a statement regarding the matter will have a chance to do so. Any person with a legal interest in property located within defined notification requirements of the subject property may present evidence, reasonably question witnesses, or seek a continuance of the hearing. When all supporting and opposing testimony and statements have been heard, the applicant or appellant will be given the opportunity for rebuttal or a closing statement. Then the commission will close the record and begin deliberations to consider the standards. The commission will make formal findings of fact based on the testimony and evidence presented, guided by the standards, the commissioner's knowledge of the community, and the recommendations of staff. All testimony is taken under oath. Although we do not apply the strict rules of evidence, please limit your testimony to the proposal as it relates to the standards contained in the zoning ordinance and the corresponding staff memorandum. When testifying, please state your name and address for the record and sign in on the provided public comment sheet. Our meetings are audio and video recorded. Please make sure that you are at a microphone when asking questions or making statements so that you may be properly recorded. All proceedings are subject to broadcast at a later date. Any matter not concluded at tonight's hearing will be continued to our next regularly scheduled meeting. We do have 2 items on the agenda this evening. The first one is an application for major variation for 2117 Dewey Avenue. Is the applicant present? I see he is. And the second one is a zoning text amendment, which is city initiated, and city staff is also present. At this point, I'm going to ask that anybody who may be speaking to us tonight on any matter on the agenda be sworn by raising their right hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth throughout the course of these proceedings? Yes. Thank you. With that, we will move on to the approval of our meeting minutes for March 8th. Has everyone had a chance to look through those? And are there, first I'll ask if there's a motion for approval.
I move approval of the minutes.
Moved by Commissioner Lindwall. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Westerberg. Is there any edits, changes that need to be made? Seeing none, I will ask, for this one, we'll just do a voice vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Anyone have to abstain? So with 8 votes, the minutes are adopted as written. And now we will move on to the business that we have before us. The first is an application for a major variation at 2117 Dewey Avenue, 23 ZMJV 0014, and I will ask staff to read that into the record.
Andrew J. Spatz, property owner, requests major variations to construct a 2-unit, 2-story live-work building with a 0-foot front yard setback where 10 feet is required, Section 613-46A, and a 3-foot north interior side yard setback where 5 feet is required, Section 613-46C, in the MXE Mixed Use Employment District. The Land Use Commission is the determining body for this case in accordance with Section 63810 of the Evanston Zoning Code and Ordinance 92021.
Thank you, Ms. Klotz. At this point, Mr. Spatz, if you'd like to come up, introduce yourself.
My name's Andy Spatz. I'm been an Evanstonian forever. And this is my partner, Matt Berry, almost forever. And we want to put a 2-unit live-work space on an adjacent property that we owned for almost forever, since the early 2000s. And we're putting it adjacent to a building that we started renovating in the late 1990s in 3 phases. It's a 19-unit building. It has 46 on-site parking spaces, and we want to take the adjacent live-work space, which is a single unit that has seen its better days, and put a new 2-unit building on that site. We're requesting a 3-foot side yard between the new building and the building we also own. And to the south, there would be a 5-foot setback. We have approval from the owner of the adjacent property. He actually moved from the stamp factory over to a building he renovated, so he's also a longtime user of the Fifth Ward. And without further ado, hopefully I don't screw this thing up. Already. Which one? The square. Okay. All
right, we'll do it for you.
Okay. Thanks, Liz.
All right, Megan, it's all you. If you go past the metal, there's two bigger.
Whoops. Backwards. Oh, those are yours.
We just have those a little bit.
Okay, so the light gray building on the left is the existing west elevation of the stamp factory, and the dark gray building on the top photograph is a sketch model of the 2-unit building we're want to put over there. In the photograph below, that is a representation of Adriano's live workspace over at 2115. And next slide, please, or scroll it up, or however you're going to do it. Yeah, there you go. Thank you. So there's 3 feet in between the 2 buildings, like I said. The idea is to have the same front yard setback, so the new and the old blend together. We're going to use all the same building materials that you'll see in some other slides. The standing seam siding and the corrugated standing seam siding, and some black porcelain ceramic tile. Keep going, Melissa, please. And you can see how everything sort of blends together from the drone shot. Keep going. And the entrances to the units are on the south side that you're seeing in the upper photograph. And there's a private outdoor space in the middle. That you can see. I don't know if it's okay to do this, but over here. And each unit has a private outdoor space. In a previous iteration, we had that in the front, but it seemed like it made more sense to give these people privacy. So that's what we're going to go with now. Keep going. Whoops. Is that it? That next slide. Yeah, neighborhood, that would be great. Or we don't need that? Everybody's familiar with the neighborhood, right? Okay. Short and sweet. Now for the trolling Thank you very much. If-
Are there questions for Mr. Spatz?
Yeah, there's windows, this is just a study model, yeah, yes, there's, actually all of the, no, windows for one bedroom space on the second floor is on the. Yeah, but that's, it,
Is your microphone on?
I don't know.
Says it's on.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah, that was my question.
okay, yes. If we went to the floor plans, let's see, keep going. Oh, you can see it there, thanks. So, these two front rooms here, over here, and over there. But they're pretty high up relative to the adjacent building, so it should get a good amount of light.
The intent was to put,
If you could step up to the microphone, please, just to make sure you're picked up.
I'm Matt Berry. The intent was to center a lot of the rooms around that internal courtyard space, so there's a lot of glazing that faces onto that courtyard space. Yeah, there's just the two windows from the second floor bedroom that face onto that north elevation. Given the setback, we have 10% allowance of open space, so we're well under that threshold.
Commissioner Westerberg?
Question, when was the building on the corner of Dewey and, I believe that's Payne Street, when was that constructed? Yeah.
The stamp factory?
Yes,
Interesting. It was built, it started in the 20s. We got all this from the sewer tap information. Started in the 20s and it was added on to 9 different times until the late 1950s. They stamped car bumpers there, believe it or not. And when we bought it, originally it had this big, it was it about 30, 35 feet long, the crane? Yeah, there was this like rolling crane in the last building that was built, which is furthest to the south in the original stamp factory. And what we did was we drove in a flatbed truck, picked the thing up, spun it, and dropped down the flatbed truck and took it out. It was pretty cool to see it done. But anyhow, though, it was built over 30-some-odd years.
okay. And you didn't necessarily add any square footage to that
No,
building?
no, we
Okay.
didn't add any, no.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Lindwald?
Yeah, could you talk a little bit about the 4-foot projection that extends beyond the sidewalk? Is that living space or just a
No,
roof? Or
it's just a window. Per ordinance, I can't remember which one it is. Yeah, it's per chapter 32 of the IBC, section 3202.3. And it's, we did the same thing in the first phase 1 of the stamp factory too, over on Payne Street, overhung the public way.
Yeah, I just am a bit concerned because I've driven, around that block a couple of times, and with the stamp factory, I mean, you've got people parking basically over the sidewalk along Dewey on a pretty, it's been both times that I've been by there, and I'm just kind of concerned about anything projecting beyond the lot line.
Like I said, in every phase of the project, we've overhung the public way, as we have on all sorts of projects per the code. And it's above 12 feet, so we have, unlimited to the curb if we wanted to. But what we're trying to do is integrate it into the design of the stamp factory.
And that is actually a window that's in there?
Yes,
Okay.
it's
I
not
just-
living, it's not living space.
No, I just wanted to make sure it wasn't an open
No,
space because, I mean, I'm dealing with a cardboard,
Right, you couldn't.
so it's hard to tell. So I just wanted to verify that what I was understanding was correct.
A plus.
Just to be clear, it's not enclosed? When you say window, I'm not
No,
sure. I understand.
it's not enclosed. It's just a bump with some glass in it.
It's interior space.
But it's interior space.
Correct.
So it's not the same as if you had a canopy, which is,
No.
and so, okay,
Projections over 15 feet, and for the IBC, that's currently being used.
and zoning allows that?
So I would go to the right of, Public Works would have to give a right-of-way.
There,
No, but I thought okay, my question, maybe I don't really understand this, but I thought right-of-way was only for, canopies and things like that were not occupied space. I'm familiar with that. but I
This
didn't-
was discussed at length amongst staff, and ultimately, it does fall into the right-of-way, but because it is governed by the building code, there is no right-of-way permit necessary, and it only goes through our commercial plan reviewer for the building code issue.
thank you.
What would happen if you went to a 5-foot setback and then you could bring your projection into that 5-foot setback? I guess I'm concerned a little bit when you walk down that block, the properties across the street on the west side all have pretty sizable setbacks. The setbacks do vary on the east side, but I'm curious as to why you would need to come that close to the lot line and project over.
The first reason is it ties into the adjacent building, the stamp factory. Most of the buildings in that neighborhood, if you walk down Dewey from south to north, are zero lot line. If you walk down Payne from west to east all the way to Green Bay Road, they're all zero setbacks. So we're in keeping with, what's being done on the majority of the buildings. Double Clutch has a zero setback on, was it Washington? No, what is it?
No, that'd be what?
Ashland, sorry.
Yeah.
They vary. I'm just, in that specific block where you're located across the street, they do have more of a setback. As you come around the corner there from Payne onto Dewey, I realize the stamp factory is very close, but that's why it would be nice to have a little bit of a setback with this building, so you start to relieve it as you go further south. I'm just wondering what's possible with your design to accommodate that.
Like I said, what, parking, yeah, parking. You want to go ahead?
So I'm not sure if it's shown on the site plan, but we obviously need to provide parking, which is something we do for our tenants because we typically manage these buildings. So we attempt to provide an abundance of parking, and then I'm sure, as you guys all know, that neighborhood right now has changed quite a bit in the past 5 to 7 years. A lot of new development has not provided any new parking in that area, so we're feeling that squeeze for sure. So based on the requirements in the rear yard where we are providing parking, it sort of pushes the building to the street. So there's multiple reasons there, but that, as far as a pragmatic reason, is the main driver. You can sort of see if there's any more on that slide, if we could move to the right, the parking layout in the back with the accessible space and then the 2 other spaces. Obviously garbage, refuse removal, and all that stuff. So we're pretty tight, and to be a good neighbor, and as we've tried to do for the past 20 years, we try and provide an abundance of parking. We've found that, especially in that neighborhood, it's very desirable. I know people are moving away from it, but we find a lot of people are using their vehicle to get to that neighborhood and to be in that neighborhood.
And there are 2 units, right?
Correct, yep.
But you have parking for 4 cars, is that right? Or
One of the spaces is accessible.
Accessible?
So,
Okay.
yep, they have the full the full length, and then there's, the other can have 2 cars.
And the stamp factory also has the 4-foot overhang?
It does, yep.
Yep.
And we've also used that at 1629 Oak, which is a building downtown. It's a part of the code, it's in there, unless the city wrote an ordinance that was specific to that section, it's allowable. So we've kind of done this one before, and we're pretty familiar with the language in the code. So until something changes, it's allowable.
I have a question for staff, because this is one of those blocks where it's not a 27-foot front yard sort of deal. Is it really 10 feet? Is that the average of the buildings facing? 'Cause, I mean, like, everything seems to be right on the lot line except for like 3 buildings or 2 buildings.
I believe the required front yard setback is 10 feet in the MXC district, but then the district does not technically allow for averaging front
Okay.
yards the way that residential districts do. So that's why you end up with a few buildings right at the
Okay.
property line and others with a setback.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, the MXE designation came into play, when was that? 2000? Right around 2000 over
Right.
there, so everything had sort of happened already. And then, that template got put on top of it, and trying to work backwards and make sense of it's a little tricky.
That's the entire city of Evanston,
Yes,
by the way.
yes.
Not just MXE districts. Right. Other questions? All right.
Just one. What would happen to the plan if you were to, because I see the 4-foot overhang, it starts, it's at the lot line on the north, and then it extends the 4 feet on the south. What if you were to, create a little, I don't know, planting area or a little courtyard or something on, the 4 feet on the north, and have the 4-foot projection stop at the lot line on the south? What does that do to the plan?
It's just a little tricky for the parking accessibility requirements to get to that accessible spot. Obviously, you need, a 5-foot aisle to get to that area to make it accessible. Taking out garbage, picking up a little space in the rear.
I'm not talking about the width, I'm just
Oh.
talking about the Dewey frontage.
Oh, the Dewey frontage. I'm pulling, you're saying pull the whole building back 5 feet?
Well, I'm just saying, pull back the window so that it ends up at the lot line. And which would, presumably give you some sort of a little overhang or something on the north side that would be enough for a little planter or something.
Sure. Well, we'd have pretty much, to get that overhang, we'd have to pull the whole thing back, the whole building would have
Well,
to come
you make it
back.
a little bit smaller, but, I mean, what are we talking, 100 feet between the 2 unit, 100 square feet between the 2 units?
And show the other plan.
I mean, just, so you'd be making the 2 units slightly smaller.
Smaller. We can look into that. It's really tight as is, as far as, room sizes and kitchen sizes and that sort of stuff. Bathroom sizes, it's really tight right now.
I mean,
It can be looked at, but really the only way to do it is to sort of shift the whole thing back. And I will say, I know all you guys have been in that neighborhood. We started this project putting front yards, like defensible space in the front. I've been in that neighborhood for 20 years working. It's not going to work. And that we kind of turn the building inward into these, cloistered patio spaces, because there's a street scene out there, especially with connections. I've seen everything and anything. We've built plenty of works over there across the street. There's a lot of police intervention, I've seen shootings, I've seen it all over there. So sort of the idea that it could be a planted area that's taken care of and nice is, Although I wish we could do it, I think it's
Or
slightly
even, well, I guess you don't want
unrealistic.
to, I guess you don't really want to bench there at the. but-
Yeah, what's gonna
You know,
happen is,
I think my concern really is with the overhang and the people who are, parked in front of their garages.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, it really doesn't enhance the, the aesthetics at all with, which is, maybe the stamp, it's not this particular site, but, I think that, that kind of parking congestion that's there is problematic. And I don't expect you to solve it with this particular building, but I think in this particular case, that overhang is, even if it's allowed by code, I think is a bit problematic.
okay. Yeah, the parking, it's a problem in that neighborhood, and I think it's gonna need to be addressed with some of the other developments, particularly if a building becomes a restaurant, you have to think about what that does to the rest of the neighborhood. And it just forces people to make parking wherever they can. They've been there before the restaurant, now they're trying to figure out, what can I do now? And what we try to do is be really respectful of the neighborhood, and any of our tenants, we try and keep them on, provide an on-site parking option. Maybe if they have, a customer or a visitor, they'll have to park on the street, but what we're really trying to do is be good neighbors. So I hear what you're saying, and I wish we could do more about that.
What is the, since we're talking a little bit about the neighborhood and safety issues and things like that, what is the plan for securing the courtyard area in the building? Is there a plan for that? And this,
Yeah, so that it would sort of have a 6-foot high wall, so it'd almost be like a fence.
so that's running with the property?
Correct.
The wall of, the south wall of the building?
You can see it in the model.
Right.
And even in the elevation, if we went to the next slide of that elevation, I think, keep going down, please, right there. So that would be looking at the south elevation, and that little cutout kind of in the middle is 2 separate gates.
Okay,
So each unit would have its own patio space
okay,
with an exterior entrance.
all right. Other questions from commissioners? If not, I will ask if there's anybody else here who wishes to speak to this. I don't believe that there is. So I will just ask you, Mr. Spatz, if there's anything you'd like to say in summation before we begin our deliberation.
Yes. I've been working here for 50 years in Evanston exclusively, and our standard procedure is we work with staff to make sure we have all the rules right before we draw a line, before we do anything. So all of the codes, we worked with Melissa for probably 2 or 3 years, and we got screwed up by COVID, like a lot of people. And all of the concerns which you have were reviewed, and the I's dotted and the T's crossed prior to drawing the first line in the design phase of this project. No whoops at our end. We try and avoid that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Spatz. With that, did you have something? Oh, you looked like you wanted to say something. With that, we will close the record and begin our deliberation. I'll ask commissioners for general thoughts before going through the standards. A reminder that we are the determining body in this particular case. Commissioner Halleck?
Yeah, I do think this is about the architecture, because you could easily do a flat facade and make it align with the zero setback. But in this case, I think the architecture's I almost think of this project as part of the project to the north. It's the same style, which is very distinctive, and whether you like it or not, it would be better, I think, for the streetscape to have it conform to the building to the north. And the fact that that is how that building to the north was designed with this 4-foot extension, I think that consistency is important. So I think any other site, I might have a different opinion, but I think on this one, I think it's okay.
Other thoughts from commissioners? Commissioner Westerberg?
I understand the architectural precedent that has been set to the north, and I get that. I still have problems, I guess, with the extension coming into basically the public right-of-way. It seems to me that if we are going to grant a release from the front setback, at the very least, everything about the building should fit within the lot line, including the projection. I think that's a really, it's a massive building when you combine it with the other right there as you come around the corner. I do understand the issues with the front yard. I can see why that presents a problem. And I do really think that the inner courtyard is a very, very creative way of dealing with providing some open space. I just personally think it would be better, and a little more respectful for the neighborhood, to have that projection within the lot line.
Commissioner Frutal?
Yeah, I'm for granting the variance. I think the applicant is only requesting the very minimum necessary in order to be consistent with the building to the north. And it would be a shame if they had to modify the design to be in compliance with the letter of the code, but then not fit the architecture and aesthetic of the other building. They're not asking for much. I think they're just trying to be consistent with precedent already on the block, and we should grant it.
Commissioner Mierenchev?
I am in support of this project. I reviewed it carefully. It's, as Commissioner Halleck mentioned, it's a distinctive style, and it continues. One of I would call them the better projects of the duo. And I'm not confused about the projection. It's a strange thing of the International Building Code, but that's the code, yes, and you can really do that over the right-of-way. There are other things that should be considered, like distance to the trees and the distance to electrical lines, if there's anything over there. I don't think that it is over there. I'm quite familiar with this space. So I will support this project. Thank you.
Anyone else? If not, I will go through. In order to approve anything, and again, we are the determining body, there are 7 standards that we must find are met. So I'm going to run through those. If someone does not agree with me, please feel free to voice your opinion at that particular time. Number 1 is the requested variation will not have a substantial adverse impact on the use, enjoyment, or property values of adjoining properties. In looking at this particular project and the improvement that would be made by this particular building and how it fits into existing structures around it, I do believe that this standard has been met. Obviously, developing this property into something that is more in use for that neighborhood, which is one of our mixed-use areas, does seem to make sense to me. So I believe that standard is met. Number 2, the requested variation is in keeping with the intent of the zoning ordinance. Again, going back to the fact that we look for the zoning ordinance intent, one of the intents of the zoning ordinance is to rehabilitate properties, to make them more usable over time. And so with this particular property, again, making it into 2 live-work spaces seems to be something that's very popular in this in this neighborhood, and I believe that this standard is also met. The alleged hardship or practical difficulty is peculiar to the property. I would say that one of the interesting aspects to this, and why I asked the question about the front yards, is quite often in our residential neighborhoods we average front yards, which is something we don't do in all neighborhoods, but is something that I think I consider, whether it's one of the true aspects or not, is to how does it fit with the rest of the flow of the front yards of the rest of the buildings on the block. And I would say that because of the fact that we already have a building to the north which exists and is very, very similar to what's being proposed here, that with this particular property, moving it back and setting it off in some way would actually look very odd and strange to this particular neighborhood. So I believe that because of the property next to it, it creates a peculiarity to this particular property. So that standard is met. Number 4, the property owner would suffer a particular hardship or practical difficulty as distinguished from a mere inconvenience if the strict letter of the regulations were to be carried out. We did talk about the parking that is being used in the back, moving the building to the east would impact on the parking, and I think if we're looking for trade-offs, the parking is one of the particular things that I'm not willing to trade off, particularly in that neighborhood where parking is of a premium. So I believe that standard has been met. Number 5, the purpose of the variation is not based exclusively upon a desire to extract additional income from the property or that there is a public benefit. There's nothing, I mean, obviously this is a developer who's come to us. We hope that they make money on projects because that's the only way they continue to develop within the city of Evanston. But there's nothing that I've seen that says that this extra little square footage that he's requesting is going to suddenly increase the income that he's able to make off this property. So I believe that standard is met. Number 6, the alleged difficulty or hardship has not been created by any person having an interest in the property. This area was developed quite a while ago. We heard some testimony that one of the things that we're looking at is the building to the north and how it plays with the proposed project, and that building had been built somewhere around the 1920s and amended several times since then. And Mr. Spatz has acquired this property some years ago, but it's not really the situations that he's asking for relief for are not situations that he has created. So I believe that standard is met. And number 7, the requested variation requires the least deviation from the applicable regulation among the feasible options identified before Land Use Commission. I believe this standard is met also because of the fact that the request seems to be a minor request in looking at the project overall. And like I said, when we're looking for trade-offs, I would much rather offer parking and grant this relief to the front of the property. It already seems to be, again, married nicely with the building next to it on the north, so that standard is met. Is there anyone who disagrees with my findings on standards? And if so, if you just state which ones. No one? All right. With that, I will ask if there is a motion to approve the requested zoning relief. Okay.
I move to approve the requested zoning relief for the case of 22117 Dewey Avenue, case 23 ZMJV-0014, as described in the packet.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Arvalo. So it's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Jones, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Arevalo?
Yes.
Commissioner Halleck?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Linwall?
Yes.
Commissioner Mudinchev?
Yes.
Commissioner Pucktell?
Yes.
Commissioner Westerberg?
Yes.
Chair Rogers?
Yes. So with a vote of 8-0, the motion carries and the project can move forward. Please work with staff and they will help you as you move through the rest of the process. Good luck with your project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
The second item that we do have on the agenda this evening is a text amendment, 23 PLND. Is it PLND? Oh, it is. So I used to do PLND 0015, which is a text amendment for cannabis consumption lounges. And Ms. Klotz, if you would please read that into the record.
A city-initiated text amendment to the zoning ordinance, Title VI of the Municipal Code, to establish a zoning definition for cannabis consumption lounges, Section 618 definitions, special regulations for cannabis consumption lounges, Section 6411 special regulations pertaining to cannabis-related uses, and to establish cannabis consumption lounges as eligible special uses in certain non-residential zoning districts, Sections 6.9 through 6.15. The Land Use Commission makes a recommendation to the City Council, the determining body for this case, in accordance with Section 6346 of the Evanston Zoning Code and Ordinance 92021.
Does city staff want to give us a brief overview of the proposed text amendment?
Yes, thank you, Chair Rogers. This came about through an aldermanic referral from Councilmember Burns and has been discussed from a health perspective at the Human Services Committee and is now doing the other counterpart of that with the zoning text amendment. At this point, no regulations have proceeded on to City Council for a final determination. And the intent is that all regulations would travel together. So current regulations for cannabis, for a variety of cannabis uses, are listed within the zoning ordinance and were instituted through a variety of text amendments over the last 3 years or so. Specifically, the cannabis uses section excluded any on-site consumption. At this point, we are coming back to discuss whether it is appropriate to add consumption lounges as an eligible use and strike that that limitation that currently limits on-site consumption. So within the staff memo, we have gone through what a few other communities in Illinois are doing. There are a few communities that have legalized this. There are obviously many that have not. Of note, in the communities that have legalized it, there are 2 ways that consumption lounges can come about. They can either be accessory to a state licensed dispensary, so they have to be within it or located adjacent to it, or they have to be part of what the state calls a retail tobacco store, which is a retail store that is comprised of at least 80% sales from tobacco or related products. The Evanston zoning ordinance does not currently allow retail tobacco stores, so the only current potential option for Evanston would be through the dispensaries. Looking at potential regulations, we would need to establish a definition, any special regulations, and then what districts to locate in. So staff is recommending that if this is an appropriate request for Evanston, that you consider zoning districts that are similar to dispensaries, since they would essentially be required to co-locate there anyway. A generally basic zoning definition that does list cannabis consumption as well as tobacco, pipe, hookah, etc., smoke all together, because from a land use perspective, that is all similar. So that essentially would be allowing tobacco smoke within a cannabis consumption lounge as well. And then if there are any special regulations that would need to be added in, such as staff would suggest that there would be some kind of operations agreement to cover any additional specifics that are needed. Altogether, if this is an appropriate proposal for Evanston, staff does recommend that it be a special use that is treated as an accessory use. So this would be the same way that drive-through facilities are currently treated, so that although they are an accessory use, a special use requirement is still required, so that additional regulations and conditions can be added in, and ultimately it is up to the city council. Questions?
Question, do we have any current applications that we are expecting or anticipating for a consumption lounge, or is this purely hypothetical at this moment?
A little bit of both. We do have an active application right now for a cannabis dispensary for 100 Chicago Avenue. There is no proposal for a consumption lounge with that one. It is a dispensary as well as a type 2 restaurant with no cannabis consumption at the restaurant. So we do have that application that will be proceeding to the Land Use Commission shortly, but not for a consumption lounge. In addition to that, staff has been in contact with a potential applicant. Nothing has been filed at this point, but there is a potential applicant who would like to open a dispensary with a consumption lounge at 1633 Chicago Avenue, but that has not been applied for to date.
How many dispensaries do we have right now in Evanston?
Currently, just the one that's at
One,
1804
right. And
Maple.
they're not asking for this either.
No.
So the only, to take it out of the theoretical, the only possibility, it sounds like, that we know of right now is this potential application for 16 whatever Chicago. You said that was maybe.
Correct.
Do I understand correctly that no matter of the zoning district, this will be special use?
Yeah, yes, it would be a special use in any district.
No
although-
matter of the district. It will be special use no matter of the zoning district.
Correct. As staff has proposed potential regulations, it would be a special use only and in the same districts that dispensaries are in.
Thank you.
Which excludes, if I'm not mistaken, only the B1 district in the city?
Out of the typical business commercial districts, yes, that is correct.
I do have two people who have signed up to speak that I would like to offer an opportunity to speak. The first one is Don, is it Ziegler? Good evening, Mr. Ziegler. If you could state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, members of the Land Use Commission. I'm Dr. Don Ziegler, residing at 1430 Elmwood in the 4th Ward. Like you, I am a volunteer and chair of the Evanston Health Advisory Council. I'm also an adjunct associate professor in the School of Public Health at UIC. And I come to oppose the cannabis lounges in Evanston. In past comments to the Health and Human Services Committee, I and others shared positions of the Centers for Disease Control, the American Heart, Respiratory Health, and American Psychiatric Associations that it would be totally unwise to establish cannabis lounges in Evanston. However, proponents don't see problems. No concerns about secondhand smoke, since customers, they say, will voluntarily go to adequately ventilated lounges, and that employees have a choice to work there or not. But according to CDC and HVAC experts, current heating, ventilating, and air conditioning systems alone do not control secondhand smoke exposure. Moreover, at present, the only means of effectively eliminating health risks associated with indoor exposure is to ban smoking activity. More than secondhand smoke, what about public safety? Likely most customers will have to drive to the lounges. The National Highway Traffic and Safety Administration considers driving after using marijuana as socially unacceptable as driving drunk. The AAA simply says, simply put, if you consume cannabis, don't drive. If you plan to drive, don't consume cannabis. Lounges have legal liability as well, similar to alcohol. That is called gram shop liability. According to Wilson Elser, the preeminent defense litigation firm, on-site cannabis consumption lounges have an uncertain risk environment and will need to enforce a reasonable per customer consumption limit, posting warnings about potential impairment, possible partnerships with ride-sharing services, and even obtaining agreement from consumers to refrain from driving if they buy or use cannabis. Even the cannabis industry website itself claims that evaluating and preventing overconsumption and intoxication will be particularly difficult for cannabis. Commission members, approving cannabis lounges would counter your own commission objectives of ensuring the public health, safety, comfort, morals, convenience, and general welfare of Evanston. Please follow the advice of public health, legal, traffic safety experts, and our own health department that approving cannabis lounges in Evanston goes contrary to public health and education of our youth. These lounges may also open the door not only to indoor cannabis consumption, but as we've heard, tobacco, possibly hookah, cigars, and vaping. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Thank you.
Okay.
The other person I have signed up to speak tonight is Bruce Doblin.
I'm Bruce Doblin. I'm a practicing internist. I've been working in Evanston since 2014, and I'm also an advisor to the Department of Health and Human Services here in Evanston for most of that period. I'll just make a few comments. The work of the Evanston Health Department has shown it's to be a very prudent, thoughtful, and evidence-based organization. I think many of our concerns around this really are looking at the excuse me, the science that's currently known and that's unknown about cannabis consumption. We're already finding serious concerns amongst adolescents with brain development and cognitive concerns. And just last month, studies linked regular cannabis use to evidence of heart disease. So I think it's very early. I think we're going to see more and more damaging results from the use of cannabis, and the cannabis lounge really it is another way of encouraging use that the department feels isn't the way we'd like to go here in Evanston. It's inconsistent with the current rules that prevent hookah lounges. I think that was a wise move made by the council. I'm not sure why we would want to go against that. We'd have to open up that consideration again if we opened it up for the special use permit. There has been claims that other communities have done this in the past. That seems like an awfully poor argument. If you look at the details of the staff report, it's pretty comprehensive. These institutions have had significant restrictions placed on the way that they operate because of the acknowledged risks. I think we'd have to think about that also. Lastly, I think that opening up consumption lounges, as Dr. Siegler had talked about, has significant public health concerns. And I think that's our top priority, is just protecting the health and welfare of the people in Evanston. Thank you.
Thank you. I see our public health director is currently also in the room, so I'm going to ask him if he'd like to say anything. And I hope I got your title correct.
Good day, members of the Land Use Commission. Ike Ogbo, Director for the Health and Human Services Department. And I echo what Dr. Ziegler and Dr. Doblin has provided this evening. Evanston has been the forerunner, has been a flag bearer when it comes to public health initiatives. For example, when we banned in 2005 smoking in public places, Evanston was one of the first many communities who did so. And not only that, in 2014, we are the first community that increased the age in which you can sell or purchase tobacco in Evanston. So the way that I look at this is we're going to be moving backwards in terms of public health and community health if we establish cannabis consumption lounges. And some might argue to say, well, you know, these are individuals who want to be exposed, who want to smoke, and they have an avenue or a place where they can go. But our job here as public health officials is to ensure the public health of the entire community. And even with the ventilation systems that they say you can put in place where individuals are not exposed, EPA provides recommendations in that regard, saying that the smoke and the odor can be removed, but the toxins that are in cannabis will be hard to eliminate totally. And the same substances that you find in cigarette smoke that are harmful, you also find in cannabis. So from a public health perspective, it is not a move that we are willing to accept at this moment or even ever. And this topic is quite new and is uncharted, and I think at this point this is not the way to proceed.
I have a question. Could you talk a little bit about the Evanston's 5-year health plan, the indoor air quality, indoor air policies? Like, what is it? E-plan, I think is the name of it.
Absolutely. So as a certified health department, we are one of the municipal certified health departments in Illinois, and there are an array of benefits to be a certified health department. We are required to produce a 5-year strategic plan, which is called the E-Plan. The E-Plan is called the local needs of assessment, where we identify health priorities that we'll be tackling in the next 5 years. And based on data, trends, history, and community input, we have highlighted 3 topics that we'll be focusing on, which is advancing health equity, mental health, and climate resiliency. And these factors that we've mentioned is also aligned with a number of initiatives that are implemented in Evanston, or will be implemented in Evanston, to achieve our goals. And when it comes to indoor air quality, I mean, that it impacts health. We are not going to be able to fully make significant impacts in addressing health equities if we allow in cannabis smoking in Evanston. It heavily distracts, it heavily removes what we are trying to pursue, which is advancing health equity. So we do have an ordinance in place that disallows us, the Clean Air Act, that disallows smoking. In particular areas, private residences are exempt from it. Some tobacco retail shops are exempt. Tobacco exempt motels, about 25% of them, about 25% of the rooms can be designated to smoking, and from private lounges. But other than that, anywhere else is prohibited to smoke. And even at that, when you take a look at the Indoor Air Quality Act of Illinois, our laws have always been more restrictive than the state. Even though the state allows some smoking within 15 feet of a door and a window or ventilation intake, we've actually made ours more restrictive, where you have to smoke 25 feet away from these areas. So speaking about the E-Plan, you can actually see how it aligns with what we are trying to do, which is assuring community health, public health, and improving the health of our community members. And establishing a consumption lounge, I don't think that's the way to go.
Was the E-Plan, is that something that the city council approved or adopted, or is that strictly administrative staff?
So it is something that is required to keep our certification from the Illinois Department of Public Health. They are the department that licenses or provides certification to the Health and Human Services Department, and they're the ones who approved our E-Plan after their review.
Okay, so it was developed by staff and then sent to the state.
Yes.
So what involvement, if any, did the city council have in all of this?
Well, before we sent it to the state, we presented it to the Human Services Committee for them to weigh in on what we are trying to pursue. And it is a sobering document. It is a well-executed document, a robust one at that, which they provided some input and reviewed before we sent it over to the state.
And when was the most recent one sent?
So the E-Plan is a 5-year
Right.
strategy. We sent it last year. It was approved August of last year.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Thank you. At this particular moment, what I would like to do with the commission's permission is, since I think the city is a little ahead of itself on this particular matter, since we don't actually have anything that's coming to us at this moment. So I would like to see something that comes to us with a plan where we can have a more involved discussion before just approving something that really is a solution in search of a problem.
I disagree. I think that if we had heard that there was you knew about an applicant that was coming to us with this idea of doing smoke lounge, or, then I would say maybe tie the two together. But I think, I personally would like to communicate our commission's attitude toward this to anyone who is even considering doing this, whether it's pro or against. So I think that we should discuss this now and vote on it now.
General feelings from the rest of the commissioners?
Well, I think that, one of the things I'd like to ask staff is, it seems in the state provisions, cannabis consumption lounge would have to be in a freestanding structure. And obviously, the 100 Chicago Avenue is, it's apartments above. The dispensary is in the city's parking garage. The building on Chicago Avenue, I don't know what the thought is, that there's a vacant, first floor space, but the basement is occupied. So do any of those locations even begin to qualify as a freestanding structure?
I believe the 1633 Chicago Avenue location is considered a freestanding structure.
Even though it has multiple tenants?
It's just a one-story building. It's right next to the big building that had a plan development recently proposed for it, but it is its own standalone building. I do believe it's very close to the adjacent building, but my understanding is that it is considered freestanding.
I'd like to vote on it tonight. I agree that we can't vote to recommend something if we don't have something more definitive to actually review and recommend. But in this case, like you said, Matt, I think it's way ahead of itself, because it's not even clear to me if there's a compelling swell of desire or need from the city or the community to have this. And the only initiation of this topic I'm seeing is just Councilmember Burns's request. So without anything else trying to push this topic, I don't want to waste people's time to go develop another plan. I'm comfortable voting tonight.
So my question to staff is, if we vote tonight and somebody comes back with a different plan for a cannabis consumption lounge that is somehow in ways different than this, we would have to hear such a case, correct?
Correct.
So that's the only reason that I'm wanting to tie them together, because we can still be addressing this issue again if people come and want to present it to us.
Well, my feeling is that I think that it's important for us to decide whether or not cannabis consumption lounge is something that, as a commission, we even think is appropriate in Evanston. And, my real issue with this, and in reading the staff memo that's talking about Mundelein and their rules. And my question, there was actually a planning webinar earlier today that included staff from Mundelein. And my question to them was whether or not they allowed tobacco stores and vape, tobacco smoking lounges, which they do, which is something Evanston does not. And so I think it would be really inconsistent to allow a cannabis smoking, lounge when we, as a community, don't allow tobacco smoking. And I think that to allow a cannabis consumption lounge starts a slippery slope sort of thing, that suddenly, would we have to consider a tobacco store, which I'm not in favor of. And again, I know it's kind of before, there was an draft ordinance that got pulled from the council packet that was talking about, a fee of $2,800 a year for a lounge. So I think that the potential arguments is somehow it's going to be a revenue producer is not a good argument. And, so I think that this whole proposal is problematic to begin with, and if we continue this, I'll kind of go through some of those other reasons, but I'd like to hear kind of what other people's thoughts are.
And I'll just want to say on the record, I'm not advocating for this or anything. I'm just saying that we aren't necessarily able to prevent another application coming before us. So that's the only reason I was wanting to pursue the course that I had proposed. Commissioner Johnson?
I just want to state that I concur strongly with what Commissioner Linwell just said about this being really inconsistent with the fact that our city doesn't allow consumption lounges of tobacco. So that was the first thing that struck me upon reading this. And then I think our public health director put it very well. This would be a giant step backward in terms of the whole smoke-free movement. It's gone on across the country. Illinois, Evanston being kind of at the forefront of that. So this, there's a lot of reasons why supporting this doesn't make any sense to me, really. And however procedurally you want to go forward, I don't have a strong opinion about that, but I don't see myself supporting any kind of allowance for consumption lounges in Evanston for cannabis or tobacco or any smokable products.
Thank you. Anybody else want to weigh in?
I will add something. I will agree also with other commissioners. I think that if we put something in the zoning ordinance, again, before we have any applications, probably will kind of invite people to ask for this. It opens the door for, all right, come here, we may allow it. So it's better to stop it at the very start. So I will not support.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Let me,
So here's where we are. I don't know that we need to belabor the point. If we just want to say no, then we're just going to say no. And we'll go through the standards and define in the standards why no.
Okay.
And I'm perfectly fine doing that because, like I said, we don't necessarily prevent somebody from bringing this to us again, but we can make emphatically our statement of no at this particular moment. Okay. So that's how I would like to proceed unless somebody sees a different way of doing that. And I'll look to staff to see if they have any thoughts, and I'll look to law to see if they have any thoughts.
well, before you go through your standards, I think I'd like to kind of focus on the first standard that we have to go through, which is whether the proposed amendment is consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the comprehensive general plan as adopted and amended from time to time by the city council. And I think I'm going to, take my planner, prerogative and kind of go through and talk a little bit about comprehensive planning and kind of what the focus is, because we all know that our comprehensive plan is severely outdated. Was adopted in 2000. And so the comprehensive plan as written doesn't really speak to cannabis at all. But I think that, it's really kind of important to understand how comprehensive plans have evolved. 50 years ago, the focus was really on land use and transportation and maybe public facilities. Evanston actually was pretty, forward-thinking when they adopted their 1974 comprehensive plan and started to focus on the environment, the energy conservation and the like. The Evanston's 1986 and 2000 plans expanded the emphasis to include more policies on the environment, historic preservation, the arts, and civic design. Kind of shortly after that, the state of Illinois adopted some guidelines for what a comprehensive plan ought to include, and that included kind of telecommunications and broadband and internet connectivity, which were brand new concepts in the early 2000s. And I think that as we move forward on developing our next comprehensive plan, we really need to be even more encompassing. So I think current comprehensive plans that I've seen They include things like economic development, which really is much more than just business and industrial districts. It includes, workforce development and improving quality of life, mobility, climate action and hazard mitigation and resiliency. And I think probably most importantly, it is, the notion of a comprehensive plan policies that focus on creating healthy communities. And, we have lots of examples that plans that have been developed and adopted that need to be incorporated into the new comprehensive plan. So, when we do it. So I think that in thinking about whether or not this standard is met, we need to think more broadly about whether or not this proposed consumption lounges are consistent with the broad policies that have been developed in Evanston. And my feeling is that no, they have not. So I don't believe that that first standard is met. So now I'll turn it back to the chair.
Thank you. So we'll run through, we do have 4 standards that we must find are met to make a positive recommendation, and a reminder that we are only a recommending body on this particular case. So those 4 standards are up on the screen there. The first one being whether the proposed amendment is consistent with the goals, objectives, and policies of the Comprehensive General Plan as adopted and amended from time to time by the City Council. I will lean heavily into what Commissioner Lindwall said. We do have a Comprehensive General Plan, but it doesn't address anything that is currently going on in the city of Evanston because it is almost 20 years old and is desperately in need of maybe that's a slight over-exaggeration, but it doesn't address many things that have come to light. It doesn't address any of the climate issues that we currently look at. It doesn't address any of the affordable housing issues that we currently look at. Obviously, we don't find anything about cannabis in there because at the time this was written, cannabis was still an illegal substance in the state of Illinois. And so I don't believe that it is met, even though it's not specifically mentioned there, and looking at the general scope and outline of the Comprehensive General Plan, I do believe that a cannabis consumption lounge is not appropriate. And going also to the fact that we are a city that has decided that indoor tobacco smoking and smoking lounges are not something that should be permissible. Going to cannabis and allowing sort of a backdoor for tobacco to come in through the cannabis exemption seems a little strange to me. The second one, whether the proposed amendment is compatible with the overall character of existing development in the immediate vicinity of the subject property. Again, this is something that I don't think that the actual lounge itself, when we look at the structure itself, is the problem. It's the activity and the use of that particular structure. So I think this standard is met. C, whether the proposed amendment would have an adverse effect on the value of adjacent properties. Again, I don't know that having a consumption lounge is going to drastically impact properties. We've seen that we've decided to permit dispensaries in town. We've not seen any great decline in values. We've not seen that many dispensaries come into town. We have one that's existing that is expanded, but that's the only one we currently have in operation. Commissioner Halleck?
The sticking point I have on this, though, is the ventilation issue, because I don't know that there is technology, maybe there is, but that will totally prevent, in fact, this was addressed, I believe, all the carcinogens and whatever else is coming out of this potential facility. So that affects adjacent properties. So I don't think.
All right, thank you. And the last one is the adequacy of public facilities and services. This one, I believe, is met. There's nothing that we would see in terms of providing the services to the area that would be impacted. Those are the 4 standards that we have to go through. Does anybody have anything to add to those 4 standards? Any other discussion on it? If not, I will ask for a motion for a recommendation. Again, I would remind that we typically do recommendations in the affirmative to make it clear that you are voting yes for yes and no for no. So I'll ask if there's a motion.
Sure. I move that the Land Use Commission recommends approval of text amendment to allow cannabis consumption lounges. Text amendment would be 23 PLND-0015. Although quite frankly, the problem is we do not have a text amendment sitting in front of us, so.
So I will now strike my original thing and
Maybe-
say, since I don't think there's anybody here who's voting in favor of it, just off a straw poll.
All right,
So
then
let's-
can I have a different amendment?
You can make a different motion, but I'll just remind everybody that yes means no and no means yes.
Okay, how about with respect to cannabis consumption lounges, text amendment 23 PLND-00.
Can I interrupt real quick?
Yes.
We would want the motions to be a positive one.
Why would we want that if there's not a single person who's going to vote in favor of it?
Robert, it's just consistency.
Okay.
It doesn't matter if
I
everybody
was
votes.
advised by council last time that I'm not supposed to have people making motions that they won't support. So I'll need to talk to law separately about a clarification as to what is their policy on this then. So I'll go back to my original, since we have Mr. George with us and he is advising us to make a positive recommendation.
Okay, all right. I recommend, with respect to cannabis consumption lounges, text amendment 23 PLND-0015, that the Land Use Commission recommend that the City Council not proceed with allowing cannabis consumption lounges in the city of Evanston. Does that work?
Sure.
Okay. So the motion is to recommend
To the
that
City Council that they not proceed with this amendment.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, so now we will take a vote, and I will remind everyone that in this particular case,
The question you can ask. Yes. Go ahead.
in this particular case, since the motion has been made not to approve this, that a yes is a recommendation for denial.
Well, it's not even the problem we have is that we don't have a text amendment to
Right.
vote on.
We don't have any conditions that we want to place on it either at this particular moment.
No, I mean, I think the recommendation is that the city council should not proceed with amending,
Okay, I'm
with the
going
amendment.
to thank law for their advice, but I'm going to move ahead and say we're going to make a negative. So please strike the last motion if that's acceptable by the person who moved and accepted and seconded. And I will now
Yes.
ask for a motion that we recommend a denial of the proposed text amendment.
I move that we recommend denial of the proposed text amendment, number 23 PLND-0015.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Proctel and seconded by Commissioner Aravalo. So in this particular case, I will remind everybody now, a yes means no. A no means yes. Would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Aravalo?
Yes.
Commissioner Halleck? Yes. Commissioner Johnson? Yes. Commissioner Linwall?
Yes.
Commissioner Mudinchev?
Yes.
Commissioner Pucktell?
Yes.
Commissioner Westerberg?
Yes.
Chair Rogers?
Yes. So with a vote of 8-0, the motion to deny, the motion to recommend denial of the proposed text amendment passes. Is that clear to everybody? Shorthand, we don't want them. After all of that. Those are the two cases we do have on the agenda this evening. We will now move into communication. Does staff have anything for us?
Thank you, Chair Rogers. So just a quick update. At the March 27th, so next Monday, City Council meeting, staff will be giving a presentation on the request for proposals for the comprehensive plan and zoning code update. If you're interested, please tune in, and also feel free to reach out to staff. We're happy to go over that request for proposal, but we will not be emailing that out ahead of us sending out that solicitation. In addition, just want to confirm that there is a special meeting scheduled for April 19th. We have confirmed quorum for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I? Sorry.
Yes,
May
go
I
ahead,
ask-
Commissioner
I just
Westerberg.
want to confirm, we do not have a meeting on April 5th, correct?
Correct.
That's correct.
That's correct. And I'm sorry, what was the date for looking at the comprehensive plan proposal?
March 27th. It is a special order of business at the City Council meeting that evening.
Asking that same question again, what dates are we meeting in April?
The
Megan?
12th, the 19th, and the 26th.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay, all right.
So we're meeting every Wednesday except the first one. At this point, I would like to make a referral under Section 219.4B of the Municipal Code that gives the Land Use Commission the authority to initiate studies, reports, and recommendations to the City Council, City Manager, or officials of other local governmental bodies on matters concerning the present or future development or redevelopment of the city. I would like to refer to staff the following matters: to establish a unified sign plan process which would update definition and intent, creating a process for us to be the Land Use Commission to be the determining body, and requiring signage over 50 feet in height to be referred to City Council as a recommendation. That we also examine signage variations and create standards for approval, updating eligible minor and major variations for signs, and creating sign standards which would make the most sign variations minor variations, and creating separate standards that are simpler than existing variation standards. I would like to recommend that we explore expanding the TOD map to appropriate radius, development of a map amendment to provide consistent buffer distances with one recommended across all zoning distances, but make no changes to the existing transit-oriented development parking requirements that are currently existing. That we also update continuance language to be consistent with the LUC rules. Currently, there is some discrepancy between the ordinance and our rules on whether a continuance may be granted or shall be granted. So I would like that to be explored. I would also request a change to the unique use to unique adaptive use process, so it would be open to all areas and not just in the R1 landmark districts. That it would require a special use instead of many variations currently what we are doing, and allow any density. That we fix the wording for no curb cut when the alley access is present, so it applies to street side yards as well. In particular, looking at section 68311 as an example, and finding all related code sections. That we establish an accessory structure setback in non-residential districts. That we clarify parking setbacks, including loading areas for all districts. Loading berth setbacks are not currently stated. That we establish a mixed-use market as an eligible principal use in all non-residential districts for shared spaces for mixed-use business concepts. Looking in particular at any parking requirements and asking business districts what regulations would be helpful or needed. That we fix the apartment hotel definition so that the definition, which currently states that it must be at least 25% rental but does not list a maximum, clarify that to be that once it reaches 50%, its primary use changes, and the definition should list the maximum rental amount or rental allowed. And finally, that the minor and major plan development adjustments, which this commission heard earlier or later last year, in particular relation to the Anne Rainey Apartments and North Light Theater, that we had a hearing on and discussed and voted and recommended to City Council, but which died in the referral committee, be revived, and that also would be part of this omnibus bill. That all this be done with the coordination of the staff and the chair on prioritizing these referrals into whatever number of omnibus text amendments that we feel is appropriate, and moving things through quickly for the things that need to be addressed immediately, and things that will take longer be done at a longer period of time. That's a lot. But that is my recommendation. I will send this in writing to staff. And I will also copy the mayor per my agreement with the mayor that whenever we make referrals, he will also be copied on these. And hopefully we can move forward on some of these issues because some of these issues will be coming to us in rather quick, rather quickly in the next few months.
Wow. The signage part brought up something in my mind, because I thought we had talked about Dapper doing some of this at one point. And my question is the issue of Dapper existing, is that done with? Is that over?
Great question. Staff just received another referral requesting that Dapper be completely decodified or removed from the city code. There was a previous referral on this matter that did move forward but was never acted upon by the city council. So there's been a new referral submitted.
Who submitted the referral?
That was Councilmember Kelly. Co-sponsors of that was Councilmember Suffredin and Councilmember Harakaris. In addition to the Dapper piece, that referral also recommends the creation of a urban design commission that would, the purpose and intent has yet to be solidified, but we do anticipate that there will be a discussion with the Planning and Development Committee prior to the end of the second quarter. So June 30th, I believe, is the date.
What is currently taking the place of Dapper, or is anything taking the place?
There is still meetings, coordination with applicants. Applicants do still receive comments from Dapper, but previous direction from the City Council was that staff was not making formal recommendations as it had previously as part of that committee.
Chair Rogers, can we add to your list?
You can add to my list if you think I
Okay,
missed anything.
I'll send you something tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay, and when you have the complete list, can you copy the
I will
commission?
I will provide it to staff who will send it out so that we are not in violation of any OMA discussions or anything like that.
Maybe whatever you send to the mayor, it could get copied to us.
I will
or
send to
whatever.
staff and the mayor at the same time, and then ask staff to please refer that on to all the rest of the commissioners. And this by no means means that this is everything that we need to do, but since we are dealing with an old comprehensive general plan as well as an old zoning plan, we're trying to make changes as things come up and as things move forward to try to address those until we can actually get a new comp plan and then hopefully a fresh zoning ordinance as well. At this point in the meeting, we have public comment. I will note for the record that there is no public in the room. So I will ask for a motion for adjournment.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We stand adjourned. Thank you.